You got Porzingis. You got Holiday. You got Derek White. You got literally, I would say what? 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You're going a little deep bomb hunting here. We don't care that we have the one heavy favorite with Rory, a couple other guys like Fleetwood and Tagala, etc. You're going to go a little deeper down the board.
This course, I think, is going to play a little bit more to the wedges. They have, what they did is they've renovated it to basically block off some of the bombing alleys for these guys. They've narrowed the fairways.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole's getting ready to come back, too. I guess this... Look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, look, don't come back. I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with an injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line, only on Sport.
Right out of the gate, Purdue team total over 85.5. College basketball is back. Also, this is a 6 o'clock tip. Maybe we grabbed like 5 extra minutes of grace here. Run, get this in. We're in the mix. No Zach Edey. That is fine. Purdue's offense still has plenty of juice. We're going over the 85.5 against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. College basketball is back. We're live with you on SportsGrid for Game Time decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh here, and we will be making plenty of decisions for this hour. We'll have Joe Lisi stop by. We've got college basketball picks. I've got 4 others that are already on the board involving your ranked slate tonight. We, of course, have the big one with Baylor and Gonzaga, ranked late night, 11:30. We're going to watch that game play out. All 30 teams in the NBA will hit the court as well. We'll go through the NBA card. But, of course, it is still the NFL's world, and we're just living in it. Let's get to some NFL news before we get to the Monday Nighter. Firstly, in the NFC East, Dak Prescott injured with the hamstring injury that is going to potentially place him on the IR. The Cowboys season just keeps getting worse. We did our Take 5 last week on updated NFL win totals, and Dallas over was a bet that I made. That bet now is barreling towards a loss, and not just because they dropped the game to Atlanta. They were a dog. That was somewhat priced in. But I do not believe Cooper Rush has enough magic to keep the Cowboys afloat over their next 4 games, which is what Dak could potentially be out if he does end up on IR with this hamstring injury. Add in CeeDee Lamb has been struggling. Unless Jerry Jones is going to go and trade for a quarterback, it is hard to imagine the Cowboys holding water here, sitting now at 3-5. It has been a tough start for them, and it looks like it's only going to get tougher. In the NFC South, Dennis Allen fired a New Orleans Saints team that I was incredibly high on coming into this season. For 2 weeks, made me look like the smartest man in the room. Dominated the Carolina Panthers, dominated the Dallas Cowboys. They have lost 7 consecutive games since that moment. And each loss was kind of its own unique thing where you started to say, oh, that's not that bad, or, ooh, that's not that bad, and it just progressively got worse. The season flipped on its head when this team lost Derek Carr for a few weeks, and I know Derek Carr's not been great. I know Derek Carr was out there when the Saints just lost to the Panthers, but This is a Saints team that could not survive without him, and he was not the only key injury. Lattimore, Olave, the offensive line got just put into an absolute blender week over week, and it has put this New Orleans Saints team in a position where now they may end up with the first overall pick, and if that is what they end up with, it will be a new head coach for the Saints. They are not going to be winning the NFC South. That is for certain. They will be looking for a new head coach next year. That for certain, too. Speaking of the NFC South, it is the defending champs for a few years now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in action. Tough spot, though. They go to Arrowhead and play the unbeaten Chiefs. Chiefs minus 405 to win this football game and keep the unblemished record. A 9.5-point favorite. Total in this one is 45 and a hook. For Kansas City, the MO this year, just win, baby. And that's what they've done in every single game so far. And it's now seeing them slated at minus 175 to have the best record in football. Runaway favorites to win the AFC West. And that this time, it's not even because the division's a disgrace. They're unbeaten, and they are the Chiefs. They are favorites in the conference. They are favorites to win the Super Bowl. All while their quarterback in Pat Mahomes has been playing subpar football, certainly through his own standards. The Chiefs right now are a team built on defense and clutch. That's what their recipe is. It's worked out nicely. That is not a recipe, though, to cover big spreads. And Kansas City this season is as predictable as ever. Yes, they will win. No, they will not cover. You look at this game tonight, they will not cover. I wonder, though, if they have played with fire one too many times and the Bucs could stun them here in their own building. Because for Tampa Bay, they are super injured, and it has shifted their odds outlook quite a bit. This team is a plus price to make the postseason, 7-1 to win the NFC South, now that the Atlanta Falcons have found themselves on a bit of a heater. That heater certainly comes somewhat on the shoulders of beating Tampa Bay twice within the last few weeks. 46-1 to win a conference, 70-1 to win a Super Bowl. But with Tampa Bay, the injuries that we point to are on the offensive side of the football. Chris Godwin done for the season, and Mike Evans likely not back until Tampa Bay returns from their bye week. However, we've seen this offense for Tampa Bay be able to keep their high-flying nature. They scored with Atlanta. They scored eventually with Baltimore. It is paramount for the Bucs offense to get off to a hot start. And yes, that means Cade Otton and Bucky Irving and, Trey Palmer maybe, but we have seen Tampa Bay be able to do that. And a win here could put them right back in the race for the NFC South. Let's put these quarterbacks side by side, Baker and Pat Mahomes. You will see the props suggest that Pat is in for a bigger night. Again, that is a huge function, though, of the defenses that are on the field. KC's defense has been flying around, balling out. It is largely impossible to run the ball on them through their first 7 games this season. Tampa's defense, falling apart, and also giving up an outrageous amount of passing touchdowns. Their first 4 games, they allowed 1 passing touchdown. Their next 4, they've allowed 14 passing touchdowns. 4 to Kirk Cousins. Then they gave up 1 to Rattler. Then they gave up 5 to Lamar. And then they saw Cousins and gave up another 4 touchdowns. That is an outrageous run. And I do wonder if Pat tonight can take advantage. The MVP race right now is dominated by the AFC quarterback room and Jared Goff. But it's Josh Allen and Lamar at the top. Mahomes, though, unbeaten already with a win on Lamar, will play Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in a few weeks. And Pat's case is going to rest on the Chiefs' record. But he will need to up the statistics a bit if he's going to use that record to his advantage and win another league's MVP. He'll have to stat pad. Simple as that. So tonight, can Pat Mahomes throw 2 touchdown passes? Based on what we've seen from Tampa Bay, anything less would be a massive disappointment. Though, he's kind of been doing that a lot this season statistically. Let's talk running backs here. We see on the injury report Bucky Irving, but all signs are indicating he will play. It puts him and Rachaad White with really low numbers. And again, these numbers are a product of now what is a split backfield, but also a dominant defense from KC. But it looks a little bit too tempting. I wonder if we play both Bucky and Rashad through their rush receiving totals. The key is rush receiving, though. Both could potentially get through these lower numbers on the ground because they are as low as we've seen for starting backs. And that, again, the nature of the 50-50 split. But both have been excellent in the receiving game. And with the Evans and Godwin injuries, there's no reason that wouldn't continue. All to keep an eye on. Kareem Hunt has continued to be fantastic for Kansas City, which is ridiculous considering Kareem Hunt wasn't on a football team until Kansas City had to pick him up with all of the injuries that we've been seeing for them. Also, with the pass catchers going into tonight, it's that I know people will be locking in with Cade Otton and Travis Kelce, and they both make sense. KC has looked a bit vulnerable to the tight end position this year. Tampa Bay as well. The Otton-Kelce parlays, will be out there in abundance. I do wonder if we see DeAndre Hopkins wake up a little bit. Right now, this Chiefs wide receiver room is looking for someone to break out in a way Xavier Worthy just hasn't yet this season. Perhaps Hopkins can do so here on prime time. Touchdown scorer market is plus money for all outside of Kareem Hunt, who's a huge minus 175 favorite to find the end zone. We will go through all of your options here. We will go through your college basketball slate, your NBA slate on a big Game Time Decisions right here on SportsGrid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What?
We are back on Game Time Decisions. The NFL game tonight between Kansas City and Tampa Bay, I think, has some juice. But we are loaded here on this Monday with college basketball back, full NBA slate, some hockey out there as well. If you are interested, the women's college game has already seen a lot of their top teams play, including USC with a close one and a ranked matchup with Ole Miss. But I think we should get into this college board here. I mentioned the Purdue quick pick right off of the gate. We're playing that team total over at 85.5, minus 104. I want to get to my national champion pick, but I figure we go through the other picks that I have here tonight, and then we'll kind of push everything forward. It is a 4-pick card, 5 if you add Purdue, A&M, Corpus Christi. I have not nailed down my selection yet for tonight's big game between Gonzaga and Baylor, but let me tell you, man, that is a phenomenal game. Two teams ranked inside the AP polls top 10, and rightfully so. Two teams that when you look at the national championship market, though, there is a bit of a gap. I'm leaning towards Baylor. Not a fade of Gonzaga as much as I like this Bears team. Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omier are two great transfers with superstar freshman VJ Edcombe ready to take, I think, the country by storm. I have some temptation on the Bears. I may prefer some Edgecombe props in this one. As I said, I'm waiting a little bit to make my selection in that game, but I have made 4 already tonight. So let's get to them. I'm going to play an under in Cincinnati, Arkansas, Pine Bluff. This number checks in here at 151. Now, Arkansas Pine Bluff is projected to be one of the faster teams in college basketball. That's fine. They are one of the worst teams in college basketball, and Cincinnati, a more defensive-led program, I think will dictate tempo here, keep what is a bottom 15 offense in the country underneath their even low standards, and keep this thing nice and tidy under a 151.5 number. I'm going to play Howard. It says 26.5. It was 27. Either way, and I messed that up, by the way, but just so people know, I have it at 27. I think those are out there at 26.5. Again, that was my mistake because the number kind of moved as it was being placed. It doesn't really matter. I'm not expecting to win this by the hook. I'm expecting Howard actually to somewhat scare Kansas tonight. The Jayhawks did not take preseason serious at all. They were routed by Arkansas. They played at a kind of not even anywhere near relevant second game where they only won by 30. A team that Howard, if they played, would be projected to be, beat by 20-plus points, quite frankly. The Bison were a tournament team last year who returned 2 of their top 3 scorers. And I know the Jayhawks, they didn't play Hunter Dickinson, right, in the preseason. I just don't feel the Jayhawks are as good as their ranking. I think their number 1 status within the AP poll is legitimately insane. I think it's much easier to make an argument that they should not be in the top 5. I personally would not have them inside that top 5, so I want to take a chance to fade that nice, shiny number 1 that sits next to their name, and I'm going to do just that here with the Howard Bison, plus 26.5, plus 27. I'm going to lay the 28.5 with Ole Miss going up against LIU. This is a spot to back Beard here, year number 2, a Mississippi team who offensively should be able to shine in this matchup. LIU, another team, dreadful. Both sides of the basketball, similarly to what we talked about with Arkansas Pine Bluff. They play fast. They can't do much while they do that. I think this opens the door for Ole Miss to shine here offensively, score 90, maybe even 100 points in this game, and make a statement. Remember, Ole Miss last season got off to what was a little bit of a fraudulent start, 13-0. A lot of people were slow to believe, and they ended up being right. They didn't make the tournament. I think Beard comes in fired up, ready, and dialed, and gets this team playing good ball in game number 1 against LIU. And then lastly, let's get the over going in Arizona Canisius. The Arizona end of this total needs absolutely no explaining. I know that. One of the best offenses in college, one of the fastest teams in college. Last year, in the early beginnings, we saw them consistently scoring 100-plus points. I think their opening game last season, they scored $122. We know that they can shine. Canisius, on the other hand, is a sneaky quick team. They're not as fast as the LIU Arkansas Pine Bluffs. They're still projected to be a top 100 tempo team here, and it's a MAC team way outmanned in this matchup with Arizona. I think the Wildcats do a lot of the heavy lifting here, and I think the Golden Griffins can do enough to play us through 155.5. Let's talk title. Last season, I played 4 futures preseason to win the national championship. 4. And I did well, right? In terms of beating numbers or being positioned on dangerous teams, right? Wisconsin won 25-1 and Auburn 80-1. I mean, numbers moved significantly by the time the tournament had rolled around. Gonzaga was playing their best ball. Alabama went to the Final Four. I felt, though, that looking back on it, having 4 teams, it's just a little bit too much. So I wanted to play closer towards the top. I really only wanted to play one team. And I wasn't going to, if you want a long shot, Texas A&M 75-1. I like as a team that returns a ton of talent. Wade Taylor, I think, has an outside shot to contend for the Wooden Award this season, legitimately, okay? But again, I wasn't necessarily working inside that range. I was not. There were a few teams I considered from the Big 12. Baylor, Iowa State, and Houston, I think, are a trio that if you're playing, especially with some of the numbers we're seeing out there, it makes loads of sense. And for Houston, the selling point is, man, we know that this team's better than the market thinks right now. They're the number 1 group on KenPom. I mean, if you play them at the 12-1s, the 16-1s that are out there, you're going to beat the number. Well, you know what the number 2 team in KenPom is? The Duke Blue Devils. And yes, I know they're the national championship favorites. That doesn't mean they're not going to win the national championship. I'm not scared of the chalk. I'm playing Duke at 10-1. You all know what Cooper Flagg is supposed to be, but I'm still not sure it's been explained enough what he is supposed to be defensively. The best defensive high-level prospect to hit college basketball since Anthony Davis. And if you know me, that is saying a whole lot. They are loaded for talent here. The Duke Blue Devils at 10-1 is where we open the college basketball season on Game Time Decisions.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst player screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dog?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, back to right here on SportsGrid Game Time Decisions. We're going to have Joe Lisi stop by in just a couple of moments. We're going to get his takes on tonight's NFL, plus a lot of the stuff that came out of the weekend, including the Indianapolis Colts, as they made the move from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco, having their worst offensive game of the season. Let's talk NBA. We have all 30 teams in action with some huge injury news already coming out. As I say with the league, I know that some people are annoyed by this. As an NBA guy and a realist, It doesn't bother me as much. It's a little bit more difficult to get plays in early. Now, I shouldn't say that. It is difficult for me to get plays in early because I just want all of the information. Case in point, the Bucks tonight do not have Giannis Antetokounmpo. That changes things quite a bit. Another example, the Warriors are bringing Steph Curry back against the Washington Wizards. It changes the dynamics of those basketball games. I was leaning Washington Wizards tonight because I didn't feel that the shorthanded Dubs were really going to be able to cover that double-digit number on the road. I felt like it was a real good spot to actually back Washington, who's played somewhat competent basketball early season. Now that Steph's back, I'm a little more timid on that number. I mentioned Cavs Bucks. Gary Trent Jr. really jumps off the page to me as a potential buy low option here on this board. Could be bounce back style. The Lakers injury report this game had a few additional names pop up. It doesn't include LeBron James, who's actually said he plans to play all 82. I imagine if he is successful in doing that, everybody will rush to give him applause, praise, and appreciation. Yeah, right? D'Lo, Austin Reeves, and AD are all, though, listed as game-time decisions for the Lakers tonight. If they are all out there and available, it's D'Angelo Russell who has my attention. Head coach J.J. Redick's talked a little bit about how he wanted to shift rotations to get D'Lo playing a little more with Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves then playing a little bit more with LeBron. If that happens, I think D'Lo's assist numbers could continue then to really check in. We saw him have 6 assists last game, which was the second most he's had so far this season. Just something to keep your eyes peeled on there, with the Lakers in a very good spot, quite frankly, against the Detroit Pistons, a Pistons team who has yet to win so far on their home floor. A few other spots here on tonight's slate. The Boston Celtics going to Atlanta. I am leaning towards the Hawks in this game. Jaylen Brown remains out, as does Kristaps Porzingis. This is kind of where, look, I understand Boston is Boston, okay? I'm not trying to take away from them. The Celtics' strength of schedule, though, has also been largely abysmal to open the year. Now, yes, they rolled the Knicks, and yes, they rolled the Bucks, but they rolled the Knicks in game number 1. They shot the lights out. It was as dominant as you could get. They were down at the break to Milwaukee. Also, the Bucks are imploding and have 1 win so far this season. We saw Boston go to Indiana and lose that game. Yes, they lost it in overtime. They were also getting drilled and had to have a huge comeback performance. The other games so far this year for the Celtics, albeit, yes, road games, Washington, Detroit, Charlotte. I mean, again, who put this thing together? This is Jim Harbaugh style here from the Celtics early season. I think the number's inflated. Again, the Celtics are missing 2 of their 5 starters. You're telling me the healthy Celtics are laying 15 on the road to Atlanta? I can't get there. I look Hawks lean a little bit towards the under in that basketball game. The Heat number tonight caught my attention. Sacramento getting quite a lot of respect. I have no idea if there's some angles out there in the market of fading teams coming back from Mexico, which would be Washington and Miami, who played in Mexico City a little bit earlier in the weekend there on that Saturday. But Miami, to me, again, with the way this number's positioned and has continued to move through Sacramento, I thought would be battling through maybe some potential major injury. They are not. These are 2 teams that I'm in on this season. Played a Miami win total over, played a Sacramento Western Conference ticket. So I'm always looking to play on one, but not necessarily looking to bet against the other. I have to lean Heat, but again, it feels like I'm missing out on a secret that everybody's keeping here that is pushing the Kings towards the level of favorites that which they are right now. The Houston Rockets tonight, are going to be hosting the New York Knicks as a dog. The Rockets have had a real up and down to start this season. It's a team that I'm out on preseason. I've talked about, I think they missed the postseason despite last year's impressiveness. They need to bench Fred VanVleet. Not sure. He is playing 40 minutes a game. It's legitimately insane what Ime Udoka is doing right now with FVV. He has been dreadful and is cutting into young guys' minutes. I have no idea what they are doing. Despite all that, I do think they're in a somewhat decent spot against the Knicks. Keep your eyes on if Rudy Gobert is going to be playing tonight against the Hornets. I think Brandon Miller props could be in line. DeAndre Ayton may look good here going up against New Orleans. Clay and Luka in some nice spots with their matchup as well. PG could make the debut for Philly against Phoenix. We've got Lisi on deck at SportsGrid.
they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst flare screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball. No. So here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like this that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time Decisions is live on SportsGrid. I'm Kevin Walsh. I'm joined by none other than Joe Lisi. Lisi, great to have you here. How are we feeling on a Monday?
Feeling good, Kev. Great Monday night game, by the way. Baker Mayfield, Pat Mahomes, a little reminiscent of that game back in the day, Texas Tech and Oklahoma. Points, points, points. Forget the weather. Party over tonight.
Whoa, interesting. Now, since you mentioned college, I've heard some slander out in the streets, Lisi. You know, you are kind of the czar of who is and who is not gutless. I saw some people saying that you were gutless because you told them you weren't betting college basketball.
Well, I mean, Baylor, Gonzaga, I know. It's. I feel like they play every year opening week. I mean, are they playing on a ship tonight? Playing on a ship tonight? The Intrepid in New York City?
It's possible. It's possible. Look, I'm just saying, if you had a college play, people wouldn't be mad at you.
Well, maybe
for
before the show was over, I can gander at some opening lines and
if everyone
see what
behaves.
If everybody's
behaves.
good,
yeah, I think
everybody's good.
I think that's a good
I'm
call.
locked and loaded for this props market for Monday Night Football.
Well, then, Lisa, let's get right into it here. Chiefs are laying over a touchdown. You know what that means? No chance they cover, so that's already figured out. Unless you disagree. I know we'll get to the props, but do you see them running away with it tonight?
No, I don't. And again, I know that Tampa Bay is a little bit limited in terms of the weapons, but we did see Cade Otton break out last week against Atlanta. The two-headed monster of Bucky Irvin and Rashad White, I think, will keep them in this matchup. The emergence potentially of Trey Palmer tonight. He's the key to the offense, I believe, for Tampa Bay. Everybody's talking McMillan. He's got the hamstring injury. Yeah. And Otton, you know, the big play. Trey Palmer needs to get around 70 or 80. A little bit limited last week with 29 yards receiving. Expect a better performance. 32 and a half is his number. Expect him to break out tonight.
Yeah, I am really interested. I'm waiting right now. Look, I just think there's, this is game time decisions.
Juice?
Yeah, I think there could be, Joe. I really do. I just want to get the full injury report from Tampa Bay, with Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, and Bucky Irving all on the injury report.
Right.
Look, they might all play, right? But even if one of them misses, we know that that's going to change some numbers here. Look, I've made a lot of jokes that aren't jokes about the Chiefs and their inability to cover a big number. When I say they're jokes, it's because I love saying it and I say it with a smile. It's not a joke because they do not do it. It's just not. They've covered, in terms of the big spreads this year,
right,
just one of them, which was actually in prime time against New Orleans. You were all over it. You were kind of fading that trend, and I know that it worked out. To me, though, this is not just about, look, KC letting a team in through the back door, which could happen because Baker has that type of ability. I think the Chiefs are on upset alert tonight. I really believe that. The Bucs offense has not really stalled out despite all of the injuries. I know they've had some some lapses within games, but scoring 31 on Baltimore and 26 on Atlanta, yes, they'd rather have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They are not lifeless. And I think just, look, you play with fire, eventually you get burned. And that's what this Kansas City team has done all season now, I feel, Joe. They are waiting for someone to beat them. I think if the Bucs jump up in this game, they could be the team to do it.
They're going to have to push tempo in this matchup. I think that in order for Tampa Bay to win this game, they want this game into the high 40s and even the 50s. That means that Baker Mayfield's in a rhythm.
Yep.
He's been consistent. Now, granted, he's thrown some interceptions, but I still think that in order for Tampa Bay to win, they want to push this tempo. They have to get to at least 28 to beat the Chiefs in this matchup, right? I will say, to your point about Kansas City, they've played back-to-back road games. And think about the games that they played. San Francisco, that was, a game that, from an emotional aspect, they wanted to prove that the Super Bowl was not an aberration. We're the best team in the NFL. They dominate by double digits. They get that game walking away, right? They handily beat San Francisco on both sides of the ball. They follow that up with a rivalry game against Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas, Pat Mahomes has owned them, but they push to the limit. 4-quarter game. They win it 27-20. They don't get the cover as basically the 9.5-point road favor. Now they come back home to face an offense, to your point, that pushes tempo and is not going to fear the Kansas City Chiefs. Certainly Baker Mayfield is not going to fear Pat Mahomes. He beat him in college, right?
Yeah.
So that's the matchup tonight. Can Baker break out with those weapons? And we'll see who starts tonight. If it is going to be McMillan, if Shepard is in that matchup.
He came out.
Okay.
McMillan's out.
Okay, so that means Trey Palmer.
He's out. You're going. They did say that Bucky Irving and Sterling Shepard are expected to play, as well as Antoine Winfield, which is of course incredibly important there. I imagine those props are getting shifted around.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are going to race to Kate Otten. Now again, it all depends how you want to play it, but that's not, to me. That's not an. You don't have to overthink that one. Kate Otten will have a good game tonight. He will. There's just going to be too many targets there. But for me, Lisi, the one angle that I find very, very tempting is both Bucky Irving and Rachaad White rushing plus receiving.
Okay.
Because Kansas City is so good against the run, it has put those rushing totals really low. But both backs are so involved in the passing game, and that was before the injuries. Now it's elevated. Those numbers for both of them are 40s, high 40s, low 50s. I think both of those guys can get through those numbers tonight.
I think so, too. The running backs are going to be critical, especially in the short to intermediate passing game.
Yeah.
The checkdowns, we know that the Chiefs at times utilize blitz packages. They want to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. That's the check down to the running backs in those matchups. So I like the look. Bucky Irving, I did take on the ground 60-plus because he's a heavier running back. If there's going to be a wet track, I look to Bucky on the ground as opposed to Rachaad White in the ground attack.
Yeah, and that's why I don't want to play look, I'm tempted to play just like straight groundwork because those numbers are so low. But truly, this Chiefs rush defense, Lisi, has been dynamic. We've talked about this here on the desk. My frustrations watching this team and kind of just the way they're discussed a little bit. But I feel that is become increasingly easier to see what they are. What is right now a great defense and a clutch football team, and that has been their recipe. And that's awesome. I think that recipe, though, can still, again, leave them a little bit vulnerable game to game. On the KC side, are you looking to play anything?
Yes, Xavier Worthy. They have to get this guy involved in terms of the passing attack. I understand they do it on fly sweeps and the rushing game, the short passes, but the guy's a speedster. His game is like Tyreek Hill if you dial it up and allow the kid to run routes and look for him. There's no confidence right now in Pat Mahomes in this type of game. This is an opportunity to really put Xavier Worthy as a main component in that offense. If you get him involved, that offense becomes more complete, especially with the rushing attack of Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele. That'll open up everything, Kev.
Yeah, I feel that Xavier Worthy is someone that they want to be great, but I wonder if Kansas City being maybe a little impatient, we saw the snap count drop last week. It could be a situation where, like, you know what? He's a part of our game plan. He's not going to be our number one guy. Do we see Hopkins take that step forward? Or can Travis Kelce just keep it up? Because Lacey, All of a sudden, now 3 of his last 4 games, I think he's well over 70, 80 yards in those games.
I hate to go in a primetime game where all the money and everybody's looking at these, primetime players. I hate to say Travis Kelce is going to be the main option tonight, and then all of a sudden we see 3 targets and 10 yards like we saw in the early part of the season, right? I would take a shot with secondary wide receivers. I mean, Justin Watson has 16.5. Hopkins has a pretty low number if you want to take a shot. I don't know what the quarterback to wide receiver relationship is with D-Hop. Do they have the timing down? I'd rather play that from an in-game perspective to see if they're on the same page early on. If not, maybe you could get Hopkins in the high 20s and then jump on from an in-game total there. But I'm still going to hold to my guns. Noah Gray's another option, too. Great route runner, great hands, especially in red zone opportunities. 23.5 is a light number.
Yeah, listen, they have started to play he and Kelce together a lot more. I don't mind that at all. It's going to be really interesting if Mahomes tonight maybe tries to up the statistics a little. If you tell me he doesn't care about the MVP, I'll tell you this right now. You are either lying to yourself or you're wrong. You just got to decide which one. We're going to talk more big picture around the National Football League with Lisi next on Game Time Decisions.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst flare screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. So here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, we've got Game Time Decisions for you here on a Monday night. It's Kevin Walsh. We're with Joe Lisi. We have a lot of good stuff that we're going to be able to get to here, Joe. But, man, there's a few things that we saw yesterday that I've been kind of excited to chat with you about and kind of get your perception on. One of those, the Indianapolis Colts.
Mm-hmm.
I want to set the stage here, if I may. I am not going to take some victory lap on how bad Flacco looked, because my issue with the decision to put Flacco in was not that I thought Flacco was significantly worse than Richardson. That to me, it is about how young Richardson is into his career and the long-term outlook for the Colts. I thought they were undercutting someone far too soon. I don't care what Flacco is. So, again, I'm not about to say, like, I told you he's terrible. That wouldn't be the case. With that said, that is the worst the Colts offense has looked all season long. The only way Indy could kind of survive that decision was if Flacco looked good. He was so bad, I don't think they can start him next week.
No, I agree. And here's the thing, the difference between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson, right? We talked about it on pregame. Joe Flacco's effective when there's a clean pocket, right? Well, Brian Flores didn't give him an opportunity for a clean pocket. They blitzed him early. They blitzed him often. They were bringing safeties off the edge to force short and quick throws, and he looked like a deer in the headlights. Couldn't push the ball down the field for a majority of that game. They stuffed the box, forced Jonathan Taylor, had a mediocre performance. They were in long third down situations all night long, and that's what you get out of an aging quarterback. I said it to you before that Jonathan Taylor would probably benefit with Anthony Richardson with the RPO game and mix. That is the difference between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. So to your point, do you give up the completion percentage for what AR brings in the dynamic RPO and running attack, or do you just want to go Joe Flacco clean pocket because potentially he could read coverage better? You got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly with both quarterbacks. So we'll see how this plays out. It's a bad situation nonetheless because now if you go back to AR, you run the risk of losing the locker room. What I do find amazing, and I watched that game last night.
Yeah.
He's sitting there with the C on his jersey.
Richardson?
Yeah. Captain of the team, but yet he's on the bench.
Right.
What does that say to the locker room as a whole that you're benching the captain? The other captain is Michael Pittman that had 2 targets last night. That's another thing. I understand Josh Downs is the main part of that offense, but you're paying Mike Pittman a bunch of money. You got to get him involved in the offense.
Yeah. Well, I looked into it, and I tried to buy low, but I knew I was being stubborn. But Flacco and Pittman have not had a rhythm in any of the games. And I was like, I think Pittman, though, could then – like that can't stay true. No, stay true. Yeah. He and Pittman cannot get in any type of rhythm so far, which is really interesting to watch play out. But it was such an insane thing that I am becoming increasingly open to more theories, right? Like, not just like the Irsay came in and forced it. Like, if you want to tell me that Steichen was like, let me tell you, we can't let AR go out there and play against the Flores defense. Throw Flacco to the Wolves, and we'll get Richardson back out there next week. Like, Lisi, I couldn't believe how bad Flacco was.
Yes.
And I think you pointed out a key thing. They picked on Flacco. They picked on his inability to move in that pocket, and they just went, we'll just keep sending the house.
Right.
And the Colts offensive line was not up to the task, which was a little bit surprising because it is a very good front, and they abused them.
Right.
But the other thing I will say, and this is what I was confident about when they made that move, because I played a Colts win total under at 8.5 right before the week got underway. And I said, I'm good now. Because the only way I was going to lose my bet is if Richardson hit a new level.
Right.
Flacco was never going to be good enough to get them to run through what was a very tough schedule. And that is clear. Like, Flacco, he's not beating Buffalo. They go to the Jets, maybe Detroit. It's not happening. This isn't the Colts are not making the playoffs, and I think they were lying to themselves when they made this switch.
No, think about last year. We talked about it in the pregame. They tapped out and plateaued with Gardner Minshew at the end of the regular season. That's as good as you were going to get with Gardner Minshew. And I told you yesterday, Joe Flacco tapped out with Cleveland last year.
Yeah.
He was able to get that team to a playoff appearance, but he got absolutely abused by a better team in Houston. They tapped out, and that's as far as you could get.
Yeah.
So you have to realistically look at yourself as an organization and say, what is the upside? Is the upside this year just to make the playoffs, to make the owner happy? Or is it to build the franchise, have a quarterback that we can rely on, like C.J. Stroud and Houston 2, 3, 5 years down the road, and build around him year after year and get progressively better? Yeah. Just the way, Jared Goff, everybody would bash him with L.A. He's got a second life now with Detroit, and they have playmakers around them, and he's playing at an elite level. The organization needs to make that assessment about AR sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that is totally fair. Let me sneak this in here, Joe. Of all the things that happened, and I know we're going to talk about this a ton on our show tonight when we get Donnie in the mix with us, but the Cowboys.
Terrible.
You were saying, and I only bring it up because I know we own everything, right? You felt like they could step up.
I did.
They did less than step up. They are embarrassing this season. But let me just say this, because you're always hot on Zimmer in the defense. It is covering for the fact that Dak and Lamb have been unacceptable all year.
Yeah, and they're still not running the football. Okay, Rico Dowdle had, 60, 70 yards in that game. They can never rely on the offensive line anymore. Yeah. And that's another factor as well. As good as Dak puts up numbers in garbage time after they're down 22-plus points, that's great. You're doing a great job, but you're losing games.
Yep.
And now, at the end of the day, it's Jerry Jones. Yeah, all right, it's Jerry Jones. But it's Zimmer, it's Dak, it's CD, it's Micah. It's everybody. I know Micah's not there, but even when he is in there, that defense hasn't been elite. Let's call it for what it is.
Yeah.
They're a regular season dominant team, not this year, but in years past. And when push comes to shove against elite competition, they are Glass Joe.
They have been, again, the defense is awful.
Yep.
There's so many things working against them. But they paid Dak an hour before kickoff against the Browns, and he is having the worst season of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the worst QBR he's ever had. It's the worst completion percentage since his sophomore season. 11 touchdowns to 8 picks. It has been atrocious on that end. It's me and Lacey. That means we get to the college football before we get out of here on Game Time Decisions.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst flare screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like this that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, let's make it happen here. It's Game Time Decisions. Kevin Walsh, Joe Lisi. Lisi, listen, brother. Let's meet in the middle here.
Okay,
all right?
go ahead.
Clemson, gutless.
Right.
Georgia, very lucky.
Yes.
Very lucky.
We were both right on that game.
Which game?
Well, Florida, I covered.
Yeah.
And so did Louisville. Did you like Georgia in that game?
So it was funny as I went through it. I leaned Georgia a little bit.
Right.
I like Lagway. He would have smashed through his numbers.
He's going to be all right, it looks like, for this week, potentially. Hamstring injury isn't that bad.
I might be doing kind of a dance to justify Georgia, so we'll get to that in a second. What did you make of the Louisville-Clemson game? I was not surprised to see Louisville win that at all.
No,
I really wasn't.
Now, Clemson had won 8 straight in the series, but we were in agreement that a bye week is either beneficial or detrimental to an offense, right? That offense was humming. They had won 4 games at home by an average margin of 28.4 points per game, but Louisville was a battle-tested team.
Mm-hmm.
They had the big three, Isaac Brown, the running back, Ja'Cory Brooks, the wide receiver, and Tyler Shook, a veteran quarterback, and Jeff Fromm as a dog was just way too many points, 10.5. We've seen them go toe-to-toe with Miami and Notre Dame, respectively. Lost both of those games by 7 points, Kev.
Yeah.
They didn't get the cover against Notre Dame because they were only catching 6.5. They were catching 4.5 against Miami. So 10.5 was just way too many points, and they showed up. They jumped up early, took Clemson right out of the game plan, and Klubnik was not good in the first half.
They looked, again, it's one game.
Right.
They looked just flatly better than Clemson. Better.
Faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was why I was always so hesitant. We were going back and forth, but I know they were rocking teams. Listen, the two best teams they've played now in Louisville and Georgia.
No good.
We've seen the example. So here's my thing on Georgia.
All right.
I genuinely think that if Lagway stays in the game, they do lose. I really believe that.
But that would have been great TV for.
You'd have had me dead to rights.
I know.
You'd have had me absolutely. Now, my confidence level when it was not Lagway, through the roof.
Right.
The poor kid that Warner could not move the football.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I don't blame Napier. I blame no one.
It's a tough situation.
100%. My take on Georgia, though, is the fact that they are still winning games while Carson Beck is turning into a massive liability.
Yeah.
We've seen this before. When Stetson Bennett was winning championships at Georgia, don't confuse that Stetson Bennett was some massive Heisman candidate or anything like that. No. Stetson Bennett would get to the playoff, be like, all right, I'll turn it on, and now we're unstoppable because every other phase of Georgia football is good. I don't believe that Beck can keep playing this poorly. I refuse to believe that he can play that. I mean, he has thrown 11 interceptions, Joe, in a 4-5 game run. Beck gets better. I still think they're the team to beat. I really do.
Well, from an offensive defensive line perspective, I agree with that because they're protecting him and they're shutting down the run. You're getting edge pressures. I will say this, the one concern I do have, there's no Brock Bowers in that offense, right? Oscar Delp is a significant drop-off from Brock Bowers, right? Where, Brock Bowers would single-handedly bail out Georgia in multiple games last year.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to see. I want to see those wide receivers start to take the top off the opposing defense. Again, if they rely on defense, lower scoring game, they could win that game just the way they did against Texas. They're going to be challenged by Ole Miss. Jackson Dart hitting on all cylinders, and they're playing in the Grove. They dominated them last year, but let's see Beck break out this coming Saturday.
So I will. No way. That's the number. That's not the spread. That's not the spread. There's no way that's the spread, Lisi. Do you know the number for the game?
I saw it briefly. I just want to make sure. Yeah, that's the number. Yeah.
You think that should be the number?
Based off, statistically, Ole Miss has one of the best rush defenses in the FBS, in the SEC. Number one against the run. They shut down Taylon Green in Arkansas. They dominated them. Oh boy! I tell you this right now. He loves the dog. He's barking. He's barking.
You're going to have to contain me.
All right.
I may skip Saturday. Hey, here's my breakdown for all 3 hours of CFT. Georgia by 1 billion. I thought that when I saw the way Georgia was playing, we might be able to get like -7. 2.5.
Yeah. That's the same line as Alabama LSU.
I know that you're excited.
Oh,
for that
I
game.
am. Oh,
wow.
Baby. We need 2 more hours.
We really did.
Two
we
more
really
hours.
Were people good? Did they behave? College basketball pick?
Oh, you ready?
Yeah.
UCF plus the 6.5. let me just tell you this. This kid, Jordan Ivy Curry, over his number of 12.5 tonight. Juice to the under.
Whoa.
We're buying the kid. The kid played UTSA. Jordan Ivy Curry over the 12.5. UCF outright plus the 6.5.
He said it. He said it.